Okay, as I jumped the ditch into this field of spring barley, the first thing that struck me was the change of colour. Right in by the ditch, I have a nice green lush colour in relatively healthy looking plants, but just to the left of that, about 1.5 metres out, plants change dramatically in colour. And when you get in to look at those, quickly manganese deficiency stares you in the face. The other problem that a lot of crops appear to have down this part of the world is relatively poor establishment. It's obvious that when crops did eventually get sown, land dried out, germination wasn't as good as people would like it to be. And then when it did germinate, subsequent growth wasn't as good as you'd like it to be. So crops are variable. There's good spots and bad spots, thin spots and thick spots. And you never like to have that if you can avoid it. But that's just a feature of the year. You can also there pick up an odd, very bright yellow leaf, which are plants of BYDV or barley yellow dwarf virus. And the risk of infection for virus is always higher where plant population is lower and where plants are showing a level of yellow in their colour to begin with. It's pretty obvious driving around this general area in East Cork that spring crops seem to be under a good deal more dryness pressure than many other parts of the country at the moment. You kind of see it in the lack of really green cover that's in lots of spring crop fields, whether it's beans or spring barley. And one of the very common problems that you'll get when spring crops tend to be a bit dry in their youth is manganese deficiency begins to appear all over the place, and frequently it's seen as wheel tracks in fields. Just here as I'm looking, you can see classical manganese deficiency with the little broken circles or spots in the leaf. Base of the leaf tending to be relatively green and healthy, upper part of the leaf being much yellower and paler. And for manganese deficiency, normally you can see the problem at a distance. When you come close by, then you can see this particular type of symptom there. And sometimes it's more aggressive, sometimes it'll look to have a lot more individual smaller spots, but generally it's characterized by a wider leaf, a smaller leaf, a very weak leaf normally, and sometimes then a very definite real paleness, this leaf being an exaggerated version of that one. That type of problem would need to be cured earlier on. Generally I would take a view that once these symptoms appear, its consequence on the yield potential of the crop is reduced permanently. You kind of can't bring it back. That's why so many of the treatments that prevent the symptoms from appearing in the first place seem to have such yield advantage. Whenever the plant has to suffer like this, it generally drops off a tiller or it drops off a grain site or something that reduces its overall yield potential at the end of the day. So this is quite common as I drive around, not maybe as extreme as that, but you can see symptoms appearing all over the place, generally in the form of tracking or other things like it. You can find other bits and bobs of things as well. A good bit of individual plants of barley yellow dwarf virus appearing as well, which is something that is being made, I think, all the worse by the fact that we have variable establishment in some fields. Generally underneath the wheels of the tractor is quite good. Beneath the tractor then, where it was sown a bit deeper or where it wasn't compressed as much, the establishment is frequently just not as good, and where you get fewer plants, it's generally more attractive to aphids, and you tend to get more BYDV in those areas of lower plant population. One of the things I noticed when I was walking around this crop is the fact that there was mildew on it, and I have to say it's the first mildew that I've seen this year. You can see the pustules there. You always know mildew because if you look across the surface of the leaf, you can see that the fungus is raised up on the surface. It's not just a white spot. And also you can rub it off. If you rub your thumb across it, you can physically see when you look sideways again that the height has gone off of it. And there is a fair bit of mildew in this. I was surprised to find so much mildew, but it's probably also a feature of a crop that's under a bit of stress. Stress tends to hit everything in terms of making the plant grow less well and helping other things to thrive as well as that. One of the things that's very common in nearly all fields I walk into is a level of barley yellow dwarf virus, recognisable by the yellow tips on the leaves, but it's not just the yellow tip on one leaf that gives it like a virus. Virus kind of quite like the flu. You get a lot of symptoms at the same time, and just because you have a runny nose doesn't mean your muscles don't feel sore. And the same for a plant. When it's infected by a virus, it tends to run through it. So one of the features is that you tend to get all of the leaves showing yellow tips on them. It's not uncommon to find a yellow feature on one leaf, but if it's not running through all of them, then it could be something else. It could be a bit of physical damage that's done with sprays, particularly in relating to frost, etc. And the black spots in it are kind of just common. They're part of the symptom. They may or may not be there as seen in those two leaves, but it's just common to get those black spots there. There could also be the start of manganese deficiency and a bit of self-defense on mildew, because again there's little small mildew pustules on this, as well as quite a number of tillers. The crop isn't that dense, and the plants are beginning to try and make use of space by producing more tillers. And if it can produce those tillers and keep them alive, keep them strong, then chances are that, you know, it will fill in considerably better than it looks today. That's our hope anyway. But there's other things as well that you find, and you know, they're unusual things, and I'm showing them because I don't always know what they were. It's almost as if it's a variegated leaf. I can't honestly say that it's a symptom of any sort. Sometimes you get plants and they throw these things up and they're kind of much more genetic than anything else. It's just a single plant abnormality, and if you find one in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, I don't think it's something that I would use as an excuse to go throwing on trace elements of any sort. It's a feature that occurs in the plant in the same way as a percentage of plants will be albinos. They'll emerge lovely and green and normal, and as soon as the plant ceases to be fed by the seed and aims to be fed by photosynthesis, the whole thing will turn white. It doesn't have the ability to maintain the chlorophyll, and obviously it dies because it can't grow, because it cannot use sunlight to drive itself onward. So some of these things are just oddities that you find in fields, and they're there almost every year, and you'll find them almost every year as well.